It's not a bird, it's not a plane, it's Superhero Slate. It's a modern podcast where we talk about everything that's great, like movies, TV, superheroes. It's Superhero Slate. Oh yeah.
Hello everyone and welcome to Superhero Slate, the show where we run down the latest superhero entertainment news.
We love TV, movies, and superheroes, so let's talk it all out.
My name is Chris Dillard.
And my name is Mike Royer.
And this week we're blocking all of our social media for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Even if we're not on there as much as we should be, we're blocking it, right? This is the moment Mike needs to put those keywords in because
feel like
this is important.
At this point in time, the most efficient thing to do was just delete Twitter, because I feel like most people are on the verge of it anyway.
I deactivated my account and then reactivated it, but I've deleted the app. So I'm not. I only get it whenever I click on something, and it's taking it through a link. So I feel free for some reason that it's not on there. So absolutely agree with you, Mike. Do that. On the flip side, if you want to entertain yourself until Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, you can watch Spider-Man on Disney Plus now if you're in the U.S. Several movies are out of there.
You should have said on the THWIP side. It was right there.
Wow.
Right
You're right. I didn't want people to think I was making fun of those with lisps, Mike. I felt like that would be very inconsiderate of me to do so. But yes, Spider-Man on Disney Plus. On the THWIP side, if you will. Most of this episode, we're going to be talking about the Mandalorian's third season. It wrapped up this week, and literally we are in the eye of the storm for Guardians news, right, and reviews, so like nothing is coming out of anything, and I'm really just kind of we're scratching the bottom of the barrel to bring you a show this week. So we thought we'd just spend a lot of time talking about the Mandalorian third season, which wrapped up this week on Disney Plus as well. So
I take it as a good sign, because usually when we review these shows, we save it to the end of the episode, and we're kind of like tapped out by the end. I feel like so now we'll get into all the dirty deeds of the Mandalorian season 3, and I'm predicting. I think Chris and I are a little split on this third season of Mando, so that I think that'll be a fun conversation.
Yeah. So that's what we've got in store for you this week. But I want to give a shout out. If no one saw it on social media, we shared to listener Jason, who was very enthralled with our breadstick conversation last week before we started the show. And food is universal, right? Comic books, movies, superhero movies, people can come and go and have different opinions, but food is universal. They're really what brings us together. Literally, the breaking of breadsticks last week brought us all together. and this week, we talked a little bit about Mountain Dew before we started the show. If anyone's interested in the summer flavor, Mike did remind me was coming out. What's that called again? Summer Freeze. Mountain Dew Summer Freeze.
It's supposed to be like kind of like rocket pop flavored, which I think it's always really funny when you get a novelty flavor of anything out there, whether it's like a drink or a food that you consume, because like a rocket pop at its like origin,
it's just sugar, right?
It's really just sugar, and I think probably primarily, like, I know it's like 3 flavors. I think maybe I wouldn't be surprised if some of the cheaper ones were just one singular flavor.
My assumption has always been they're it's like a cherry or a strawberry at the top, right? A middle. I don't know what white would fall under. Unless it's like pineapple.
I think it's like lemon lime possibly.
Okay, and then the bottom's like a blueberry or raspberry, a blue raspberry, if you will.
But if you were to like, let's say, melt that popsicle and drink it, right? You're not going to be able to distinguish what the hell you're drinking, right? But if the can you're drinking out of has a little picture of it, then all of a sudden your mind like reconfigures it together, right? It's like your brain like bringing it together. Like when I had that candy corn flavored soda a couple weeks ago, like I had to be told it was candy corn. Yeah. But the second somebody tells me, I'm like, oh, I see it now in my mind's eye. My third eye, Doctor Strange, is palming over my forehead.
Yeah, it's like when you you can't see like a hidden figure, or it's like one of those things where like, is it an old lady or is it a beautiful young woman? And you have to like look back until someone tells you what it is. Like you're like, oh, there it is. It is cherry, lime, and blue raspberry, and the classic iconic bomb pops, by the way. But obviously they made more. My wife, she's a big fan of the Smirnoff makes a bomb pop flavored I guess summer drink, like one of their Smirnoffs. Like, it's not a seltzer. They have seltzers of it, but she likes the regulars. I like the seltzer versions. It's just like a universal mixture of 3 flavors, right? Like, I've never heard somebody like, no, I don't like a bomb pop flavor. Like, I've never heard this in my life. So Is this the great unifier, Mike? The three flavors together coming, representing, America. I was just funny because I told Mike last night, and you remembered, it's Thunder over Louisville season. Last night, Mike, which is a half-hour fireworks show, literally on the bridges between over the Ohio River between Kentucky and Indiana. And
I thought you were saying a storm came through because you had to deal with tornadoes like the other week.
No, literally, it is a Thunder over Louisville is a fireworks show. They do air shows during the day, and then they have like this half-hour fireworks show to music and stuff on the river. Now, I used to go long when I was like younger, years and years ago, but I do not want to go near that crowd or deal with that traffic for like a 30-minute fireworks show I can watch at home on TV. But it is the kickoff for the Kentucky Derby down here. So in 2 weeks, I believe the Kentucky Derby will be running, and they celebrate for 2 full weeks doing all sorts of things to get ready for this. But they had fireworks last night for that. So it's crazy. It's crazy. Spring has sprung, Mike. We are moving into like full on spring season here in the Midwest. I don't know how you're treating it out there, but absolutely spring is here. And with spring comes allergies, and with allergies comes the ability to stay inside because it's so nice out. You want to stay inside and away from those trees that are trying to kill you.
I love that. I love that segue. I love
yes,
that pivot,
and to that point, I got a video game this week. Finally, after 1 full year of being delayed, a little more than a year, and even like longer than that, it was delayed more. Is Advanced Wars 1 and 2 remastered? Are you familiar with the Wars series of games from Nintendo and Game Boy?
I am extremely familiar specifically with the 2 games that you're talking about.
Yes.
And I'm really excited to see that they got remastered because I tried to keep up, I feel like, with Advanced Wars as like kind of my Nintendo handhelds evolved over the years. But I don't know if I was just in love with the simplicity of the first 2, but like I feel like I have a memory of getting one of the more advanced wars, and they started adding extra mechanics. I'm like, what is going on here? I don't have the capacity to learn all of these military tactics. What happened to the cute little tanks and the little people?
Yeah, exactly. So there was a game called Wars. I guess it might have been like Famicom Wars or Nintendo Wars back when it started, right? And it's a turn-based strategy game where you control your little military units in a grid-based, turn-based fashion, and you have, obviously it's like a rock paper scissors format, right? Your infantry are good at capturing towns, but tanks are better than infantry, and long range are better than tanks, but aerial units are better than long range. You get the, Mike, you've played it, you understand it, but like apparently, the one I really got in was Advanced Wars, which was on the Game Boy Advance, and then Advanced Wars 2. They both came out pretty close to each other, I think right early 2000s. And as Mike mentioned, they have continued to release more and more of these. Advanced Wars, a couple more later. And then there was Battalion Wars. That might be the one you're talking about, which was a little more advanced. But, finally here, I don't think they've had any since the 2000s. The original, between 2000 and 2010, is the remakes of Advanced Wars 1 and 2 for the Nintendo Switch, which is fantastic. So what is great about this, obviously after 20 years, they've updated the artwork, right, of the characters. They've upgraded the units. It plays smooth. It's great. There's no load screens because it's all on modern technology, playing a game from 2001 or so. So absolutely having a blast playing through this campaign. I will tell you one thing I forgot about this game, Mike, and you might agree, is the AI is brutal. They are relentless. They will straight up go after the unit that can like win you the game immediately, and you have to figure out how to stop them even faster. When you find the green army, so you play as the orange army, there's a blue army, there's a green army. They have their commanding officer has this ability to let them just do another turn again in the middle of their turn, and that sucks. That sucks finding that out the first time. I'm like, oh, this game is so fun. My nostalgia is flowing back. Oh, I remember that Japan was not nice when they were making these games years ago.
Yeah, it's also, I feel like I've never programmed a video game before, but I feel like if it's a turn-based strategy game, it's got to be easier to create a very difficult AI because you're just playing against almost like a chess robot in a way. Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if you could get rocked at that.
Yeah, I got one game I didn't lose, but I quit because I realized like it was the one I talked about where the guy could like just make them do another turn. I'm like, oh, this does not work with the strategy I was pulling off. So I reset. I haven't lost yet, knock on wood, but like I could easily see myself losing pretty quickly if I'm not like staying on top of this stuff. So absolutely a fun time with those games. Able to pick it up. I pre-ordered it, but you can pick it up in the store. I saw it in a couple stores this weekend already. So if you're a Switch person looking for some casual turn-based action, Advance Wars 1 and 2 Remastered. Absolutely available. And I'm going to go into talking about some media I got to watch this weekend. Not Cat Dog, Mike, as I told you about yesterday. My dad had full range of my Plex server. He just put on Cat Dog for an hour. I just got done watching right before we came in about the Apple TV Plus or Apple Plus movie Ghosted. Which you said you kind of heard about a little bit. Not a whole lot of marketing for this movie. It kind of popped up on me in a couple news articles recently, and I'm like, oh, it stars Chris Evans and Ana de Armas. Great Chris Evans, Captain America, right? Ana de Armas is the lead in that upcoming John Wick spinoff, Ballerina, right? So I'm like, this should be a pretty solid action movie. And let me tell you, I have never wanted to unrecommend a movie so fast in my life. Oh my
gosh, no.
Yeah. I think the premise of this movie is great. There is just a normal guy who bumps into a high level spy skills at a farmer's market. He doesn't know that she's at. They have like a one night stand, and then he goes crazy texting her, and she doesn't respond, so everyone tells him that he's been ghosted. Hence the title of the movie, Mike. Mm-hmm. Great premise. However, it takes like a half hour of this 2-hour movie to get to that point. And I'm like, for an action comedy, you don't want to drag this on. Like, you want to get to the action. You want to get to the comedy. The action scenes in this movie, I think, are pretty spectacular. It was the stories by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick, who I believe did Deadpool 1, right? Or at least Deadpool 2, one of the Deadpool movies. And let me tell you, the cameos in this movie, Mike, are fantastic. Like, a lot of big name cameos, if you will. Mm-hmm. I will tell you, there are probably more Marvel actors in this than you would ever believe would be in a movie like this. And so don't look at the cast list if you want to watch it, but it was fun to see it. But I will tell you, I've just never been so bored with like two really, really popular action stars and in action, quote unquote, comedy. Comedy's not funny at all in this movie, by the way. That I've ever seen. So I cannot unrecommend this movie fast enough, but like if you want to read about it, feel free to do so. But like I wouldn't say I had a good time. I can't say I had a bad time because I saw Chris Evans like a month ago and I don't want him to think I'm talking bad about him, but like this movie is just awful in terms of like not having a good time. I went to go to the bathroom in the middle of it. My wife's like, I'll pause it. I'm like, nope, I don't need to see what's happening next. Like I will understand when I come back when the scene is still playing out what is going on here. So, did you ever watch like what was it, Night and Day, the Tom Cruise movie with what's her name from The Mask? There's something about Mary.
Cameron Diaz.
Yeah, Night and Day with Tom Cruise and Cameron Diaz, where he's like a spy and she's like not his girlfriend, but like caught up in all this stuff, like while she's trying to date him. It's like that's a great version of this movie, if you will.
Yeah,
so
I feel like it's now a trope. No, because I can think of a third example of there's a Chris Pine, Reese Witherspoon, and what's his name, Bane and Venom, Tom Hardy.
Okay.
where they're like both spies. They're trying to date Reese Witherspoon, and she gets tied up with it. So apparently, every screenwriter comes to Hollywood and it's just like, I got a great idea for a movie. What if spy tries to date? That seems to be the premise.
Oh yeah, and it's like, what if a normal person who's like just down to earth and really cool is caught up in the world of super spies? And yeah, I think it's great great actors, but man, this was just the delivery was not there. So really disappointed to say that, because I think, like I said, it's got some fun cast, but like just really bleh, if you will. But it didn't star the mom of Chris Evans is Amy Sedaris, who's actually in The Mandalorian. She is the guy who builds his ships and stuff on Tatooine. I can't think of that character's name. It starts with a P, I think. So but yeah, anyway, just a very meh time in a movie, Mike. So I can't recommend it. But you are moving on to a couple other films here. And I don't now don't tell me I'm wrong. Did Reese and Werner have anything to do with? They didn't do anything with John Wick, right? They're just Deadpool people, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I've no idea.
Yeah, okay. I'm gonna look this up while you're doing this, but you've got to watch some fun movies with action in it.
All I know is I'm finally trying to move through the John Wick franchise so I can get me and my wife to the theater to watch John Wick 4 before it leaves. And we have to act soon, right? Because Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is coming out. You know, it's going to start pushing other movies out of the screens. You know, movies already don't stay very long in movie theaters anymore to begin with. So we finally sat down yesterday and like, oh, let's put on John Wick 2. Let's finally watch it. Now, I did my wife a service of trying to recap the first John Wick movie, because this is actually a problem I had when I went to go see John Wick 2 for the very first time in theaters. It had been however amount of time was between the first movie and second movie where I had seen the first one, right? So, like, I kind of had a vague memory of what happened in the first movie, but, like, I was under the impression that he got his car back in the first film, and I was extra confused when the second movie starts off and he's, like, going back to steal his car. So I was very confused. So I was like, I'm going to help my wife out here. I'm going to let her know where we're at, how things are going, and we ran right into it, had a great time with the second film. And my wife's favorite part of this franchise is all of this continental underground rules and society, and they might be assassins, but they have a code that they follow, and she's getting really into all of that, and that only gets amped up the more and more that you get into this franchise. And it's honestly the smartest decision that they ever made. I'm sure that there's some behind the scenes interviews where they talk to the screenwriter or creator of John Wick, but I'm very curious, like, did they ever think this underground spy stuff was going to be the most engaging part of it? Because I think most people would probably point to, like, the action and the intensity and the set pieces, but, like, it's honestly, it's the underground story that makes you care and pushes you through to the next scene. So she was really getting into that in the second one, and then I didn't even have to bring up the option of watching the third one. The credits start rolling on that second one, which ends on a cliffhanger compared to the first one. Kind of wraps everything up, right? So the cliffhanger ending is put out there. John Wick has like an hour, before the open contract goes, and she like looks at me and she's just like, can we watch the next one? And I was like, I'm so glad I didn't even have to recommend it. So we rolled right into the third one right away. So we're already planning our date night this week around John Wick 4. So we're hyped. We're ready to go. We're excited. It's also nice because, like, I really like these films, but I don't really get around to rewatching a lot of movies. So a lot of these were like my second time viewing these, and it was just great. It's fun. John Wick likes three things. I've found the pattern so far. Obviously, he loves headshots, right? We all know that. And he also, he likes the double tap on top of that, right?
That's right.
Which I always find really funny because it's just like, you put that gun right under his chin and pull the trigger. I'm pretty sure that mercenary's dead, but he goes in always for one more shot. So, he's prepped for any possible zombie crossover that a Hollywood studio might put on top of him.
Oh, yeah.
Number two, loves to shoot kneecaps, which I don't know why it seems so brutal to me, but like I feel like the knee is just a very an intricate part of the human body, and just to imagine a bullet blowing through it, just like completely decimating it, right? Because it's just like, as you see in action movies, sometimes you could get shot in the torso or the arm or the shoulder, right? You get bandaged up, get back out there, right? But I feel like there's no way you're coming back from getting blasted in the knee, right? Like, even if you survive his onslaught, right, and you're like one of the henchmen that like crawls away, and gets out of there, which almost never happens. John Wick's KD ratio is perfect, right? Like, there's no.
I hope it is, because he's not really died. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. Well, I guess survival rate.
Yeah. His kill count is through the roof. How about that?
Yeah. So the knee is always very visceral.
Oh yeah.
And then also, like, this is the most realistic thing about the John Wick franchise, and I believe every human being would succumb to this when in a life and death situation. He goes for the groin anytime it's available, right? Because he is an assassin, he's a mercenary, he will hold up his honor code, right? But if his end goal is to kill you, he doesn't really care how he does it. He will kick you in the nuts, he will shoulder you in the nuts, he will get you in the groin however he can. And it's just interesting to watch it. I didn't really pick it up on my first watch through of these movies, so that's my advice to anyone out there. If you have a possible assault in front of you, right, just go for the bits. No one's gonna be in that courtroom, right? Like, well, we were gonna send this criminal to jail, but your defendant over there blasting him in the nuts, so we're gonna let him go. Like, that's not gonna happen.
This is not a spoiler, Mike, but I will tell you, if you love nut shots, 4 is gonna be up your fucking alley, my friend. Like, you are gonna love it. So,
and also, like, you can also see the production value obviously increase in these films. And I'm sure the fourth one's going to be off the chain. But, I always find it funny to track kind of like the visual effects squibs, or just visual assets that they use to put in blood splatter and stuff. Because in the first John Wick, it's probably the worst part about the first film. And it's a great movie, right? But some of those VFX blood sprays are oh, that's out of the Action Essentials pack that you can just Google and download for $50. Well, anyone can get those, right? But they improve them over time. So I was like, this is great. This is just a scrappy. I just love that this was just a script floating around out there in the world, and it just happened. The best case scenario happened, right? It just turned into this whole thing.
I'm looking. I think we confirmed this last time. Every time they made a John Wick film, the budget has doubled. So the first one was made for $20 million. This last one, 4, was made for $100 million. So absolutely,
if you can tell if you're from a younger generation, the John Wick franchise is just. It's amazing because it's this is how movies kind of always used to get made, right? You make the first one, you prove yourself kind of with a lower budget, but you delight the audience, you surprise them, and then this is just a normal template for filmmaking, right? We're going to give you more money on the second one because you've proved you can make more money and the audience is there, and then you just keep folding it up and up and up and up. I would say the uniqueness to this one this time around is we've gone past 3 movies already, right? Yeah. There's spin-offs in the work, so it's just exciting. John Wick makes me excited. And
this is a quadrilogy, right now that exists because, one person is directing this. Chad Stahelski has directed all 4 of these movies, right? And I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure he was a stunt coordinator before this. So, this is somebody who didn't start on film school. He did stunts, wanted to make a stunt movie, added John Wick, keeps rolling up, right? So, it's fantastic. It's a story of I guess a successful franchise. But yeah, it's hard to believe it's been 9 years or 10 full years of John. We've had as much time between John Wick 1 and 4 as we had between Guardians 1 and 3, Mike. Which
wow.
Which is going to be a great segue into our first topic if you're good with it. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 is dropping in a week and a half for good, right? May 5th, May 4th, and everybody. But I will tell you right now, I had an article just pulled up right before this. They're doing early screenings of this movie for social media reactions, right? To get people hyped, talking about it. Usually 2 weeks before a movie, that's a good sign. You don't really see social reactions this early on a movie, which is just kind of mediocre. So Guardians Volume 3 is, I think, the studio has confidence in, right? You've got James Gunn, proven track record with 2 Guardians movies. A franchise that nobody thought was ever going to work, right, at the start, because who gets a talking raccoon and a talking tree into a movie and makes it viable? It's science fiction, it's high concept, but James Gunn has been fired from Disney, as we talked about before the show. Guardians 3 should not exist, and it shouldn't exist in a normal world, and this is crazy that it does, and I'm excited that it does, right, at its current state.
Yeah, it's safe to say that it's going to be impactful, right?
Yeah.
Whether or not it's good or not, you can make your judgments and your guesses, but it'll have an impact for sure.
And I didn't, read into the social media reactions very well, but it is one of those things just to say, hey, these are going to be out there. And I believe I've got to go through our chat conversations here. When is the social embargo or the review embargo is lifting next next Friday, the 28th at 10 a.m. Pacific, so 1 p.m. Eastern. So reviews are going to drop on Friday. So if you want to maintain, I guess, your secrecy from this, and whatever you want to stay away from this as far as you can, I would start blocking all those keywords right now, or just delete Twitter. That's a quick way to get rid of all that stuff as well. But this is our reminder. You need to do that. The reactions are online. I can't. There are people. Me and Mike talked about this before the show. There are people watching this who are hyped and are behaving, right? I haven't seen spoilers. I haven't even heard about end credit scenes, Mike, and that's usually the first thing that drop out of people who are leaking things. So with the Marvel Studios spoiler subreddit shutdown, that is also being curbed quite a bit. So we're at a really good point here where we can avoid a lot of good stuff, but the reviews are going to be no holds barred, right? That's the big ones that I worry about reading. I don't want a reviewer's opinion to really reflect how I feel and how I'm enjoying a movie before I get there. So everyone just block that if you want to. The other confirmation I just got, Mike, this is a 2 hour and 29-minute film. This is a little bit longer. So be prepared to go to the bathroom beforehand, keep yourself together. You probably won't want to miss any of this movie the first time you watch it, I feel.
Yeah. The wife and I are trying to customize and maximize our theater-going experience. So the theater that we go to, premiere showings, on like Thursday nights, are usually in one of two theaters, like Theater 7 or Theater 8. And we're getting very familiar with what seats we like in each theater and so forth. But the problem is the theater that we're seeing this screening in, when it comes out for Guardians, there's like a very specific LED running light along the floor that like blinds us out of the corner of our eye and like drives us fucking crazy, because like we like these seats. It's just in this awesome kind of section corner of the theater. We always go out of our way to get them, but like this freaking light. So like I'm gonna take gaff tape or like electrical tape with me to our screening, and like when no one's looking, I'm just gonna put the tape over the running light. Oh, yeah. I'm like, nope, I'm fixing this, and
you should just take a big electrical strip tape and just cover the whole thing.
Yeah, and they don't pay people enough to work really any part-time job anymore, so no one's gonna care that works there. They're not even gonna notice. So
yeah, no one's watching you go sit down, right? They're only watching you when you're in the movie. So if you do that the second you get in there, I'm pretty sure you might even get an applause from everybody else sitting around you. Mike, at that point.
So this will be a fun thing that we can keep track of on the podcast. See how long my tape stays up. So
yeah.
I'm saying this now to remind myself. I think I gotta locate the tape, make sure I got it.
Yeah. Locate. I did see at the store this weekend all the colorful rolls of duct tape are starting to come out. So again, summer is here. Don't fix things, just duct tape them. Is what I'm hearing for this. I will say I don't want to jinx it, but I might have an opportunity to watch this movie this coming Friday, Mike, and I'm really excited. If anyone wants to know anything, they can message me over the next weekend. But I'm not going to come in with a review next weekend. I'm going to watch it. If I get a chance to watch it earlier, thank heavens. If not, I still have my tickets for opening weekend, and I'm going to keep regardless. So, not next weekend, but in 2 weekends, we will have a review episode for Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 for everybody here. So, very, very excited for that. At this, it'll probably be. I say next weekend is going to be also the last weekend for Mario to maintain at the box office, you think? I don't know if anything else coming out between this coming weekend, right? Evil Dead Rise came out, but Mario still beat that because it's an R-rated film.
I just saw a headline that says they're predicting $1 billion box office passing
for Mario?
Next week on Mario. So, yeah, that is cranking.
So the other funny part about this, in Argentina, some local TV station played a cam version of the movie in full on TV for people in Argentina of Super Mario Brothers. Had you seen that yet at all?
No.
Yeah. So like, I believe I just pulled up. I had it saved here. Gin TV Argentina station played literally the full cam version of Super Mario Brothers movie on their like live TV network there in Argentina, and they also did it with Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania down there.
This is what we should do, Chris. This also reminds me. I just saw a headline not too long ago that says this uninhabited private island could be yours for like it was pretty low dollar amount compared for a private island, right? So we crowdfund some money, right? We get some people moving in on this island. We create our own kind of like broadcast TV on the island, and then we just play pirates of things. And we just wait and see how long it takes for like, I don't know, Hollywood to hire a private militia to come take us out.
Yeah, or how do we get the internet out there? I always thought you were going to say, let's open up our own independent movie theater and then just put a camera in the theater so we could watch it in the safety of our own homes. But you've really surprised me here.
I like to think that extra stuff.
Yeah, I just checked. Super Mario's $876 million. Oh, be prepared for the next couple years of Mario movies, Mike. Well, actually, I take that back. Nintendo's really slow about their stuff, right? We talked about that with Detective Pikachu being successful, so we'll see about that. On the flip side, for those who did not know, it was a really surprise announcement, but this was made years ago. At least 6 Spider-Man movies from the Sony's franchise and 5 from Sony, 1 from Marvel have made their way finally to Disney Plus in America for us to watch them.
Yeah, this was weird. It was like a surprise, but also like, oh no, we were told this was gonna happen. It's just one of those things where it's like, well, who's keeping track, right?
Yeah.
Of that, like
when's that
legal
day,
announcement that happened. Yeah, it just kind of dropped out of nowhere. So, which is great because a lot of these were just on weird streaming services before, right? Like whatever, like Stars or
I thought
Crackle
Netflix
or Showtime
had some of these for a while, but I never saw them on Netflix or heard about them on Netflix, so I don't know what's going on. But to drop them in the middle of the week in April, I'll take it. That's fine with me.
And I definitely don't believe that this is going to be permanent in any way. Like, I know it seems like, oh, they finally made their way home in a way, right? I think this is just a streaming licensing deal, just like any other streaming licensing deal. So these will probably be leaving Disney Plus in like, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years or something like that. And then they'll probably move to whatever else, who wants to pay for them next year.
I'm pull up an old article. So this was announced in 2021. Whenever the deal was. I'm trying to see if they said anything about, like, because, currently we know Sony has Spider-Man in perpetuity as long as they're making a movie, right? It doesn't expire. They're good to go. But everyone has seemed to be playing nice since Marvel Civil War, right? That's great. Everyone's been fine. Sony's still making their weird one-offs with Venom and the fucking Morbius movie. I always forget that exists until something, brings it back here. But I don't know if I don't know when they don't say when the thing ends. So yeah, you're right. They could go away. I would like to see them like, hey, we're all playing ball here. Disney has first right of refusal, right? Hey, as long as we re-up our contract, we can keep it unless something goes completely sideways. Is what I would like to hear. But we'll see about that. And as we talked about last week with the future of Hulu in kind of an unknown state, right? I don't see them definitely going to there either. Now, the 2 missing movies from this are Spider-Man Far From Home and Spider-Man No Way Home. But I have heard Far From Home is supposed to land later this year on the streaming service. No word on No Way Home yet. So that's fine. I'd like to have everything MCU related in one playlist, right? We've always talked about that being the dream of the streaming services. Like, hey, here's the timeline in this, and you can watch them all if you want to. Throw them, hit play, and walk away if you will. So that's pretty cool. Now, the flip side of that is, in that same regard, Disney is licensing all the movies they can from Sony, if you will. So Venom is also on Disney Plus for those who are really interested in watching Venom again. Now, it's not for us, but people did go watch this movie, right? It made a lot of money, so there's nothing wrong with them having it on a streaming service, right? One home for everything. I think, Mike, and you tell me what you think. The benefit is Sony never made their own streaming service, and I just want to thank God for that at this time.
Yes.
Because it would just be chock full of awful stuff at this point. Yeah, anything else? I mean, are there any other, I don't need Morbius, I don't need Venom 2. Is there any, I guess, standout movies on non-Disney Plus yet that you'd like to see from like the old Marvel days that you'd like? I really wish I could go back and rewatch. Fantastic Four's on there, but like Daredevil or like Elektra, or something, like just to revisit these things.
Do we want to put anyone up to those? I mean, does anyone need to suffer
Yeah.
through
Well,
Ben Affleck as Daredevil again.
I like the idea, for I own physical copies of these movies, but I would like to easily be able to legally access them, in an area by the company who made them, right? Which was Fox, which is now owned by Disney. So I would like to at least be able, like, hey, if I ever wanted to sit down and revisit this as an example of, like, hey, things not to do, right? Or like, hey, a couple scenes in this were pretty good. Let me go check them out, again, legally, without getting the disc out. I think that would be nice, just convenience sake. Not necessarily, hey, or like what's it, like an archive, like archive.org does, right? Like, this is the history of where we've come from. Look how far we have not fallen, thankfully. We're not doing X-Men 3 again, thank God, because, they did that twice with X-Men 3, and then, what was one after Apocalypse they did? Dark Phoenix they just call it Dark Phoenix at the end of the day. God, I forgot about that movie. So, yep, check those out on Disney Plus. Moving in, CinemaCon is this weekend, Mike. I've not heard a lot of information out of this. Have you yet? Have you seen it anywhere?
No, I saw a headline on like Variety or Deadline. Maybe it was like this morning or yesterday that CinemaCon was coming.
Oh, it's tomorrow. It's tomorrow.
Yeah.
There it is. So, CinemaCon is starting tomorrow, and with that comes the first public screening of the Flash movie, Mike, which doesn't come out till June.
Man, that is crazy. I feel like, just show it to anybody. We gotta get this out in the world.
Tom Cruise has seen it. We don't need anybody else to see. He recommends this movie, Mike. You remember that?
Yeah, that's true. And if it's does that mean we're gonna get like leaked cams of like the the ending of the movie? At this point in time, I'm just like, usually I'm like, I don't want to watch cams. I don't need them, right? But I'm just like, if there was a cam of the Flash out there, I'd probably just watch it. If there was
a cam of the Flash 2 months early, I'd watch it. I do think they have done some. I think there was like one final quote unquote test screening this week is what I was reading. That's why I thought it already screened. I just looked up. It was a test screening. With all the changes from, I would not say the DC universe, I wouldn't say maybe even Safran or Gunn mandated, but they have changed this movie so much that they've removed any Zack Snyder references, only connecting it to the DCEU, Joss Whedon's version even, at its finality point, which is, good, because, we don't need to continue Zack Snyder's universe beyond anything else. But apparently
the Russo brothers have a podcast that shows up occasionally in my social feeds called like Pizza Film School.
Yeah.
And they just recently did like a 2-parter episode like with Zack Snyder.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I can't bring myself to watch it / listen to it, but also like I kind of want to, because talk about like no matter how you feel about Snyder, right? Like, this is a unique style of conversation of like these two superhero film juggernauts kind of getting in the room together. But at the same time, I feel like you're not really going to hear like you're only going to be hearing like sanitized stories, I feel like.
Well, at the same,
like, what a wild combo.
Well, I think at the same time, what's interesting is, whether we how we feel about Zack Snyder and his work in the DC and everything before that, he is still getting hired and funding from studios, right? We are not making millions of dollars to make movies that, we get to sit here and bitch about on our podcast.
I don't know about you, Chris, but I have a very popular alias that rhymes with Smeven Spielberg. I do a lot of old makeup, and it works out really, really well for me.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm also George Lucas. People, you can blame me for the prequels. But I think it would be interesting to hear his take on filmmaking. I know we disagree with it, even though we saw, what was the zombie movie called again? Dead Army?
Army of the Dead,
yeah, Army of the Dead. And his very, very weird bokeh focus on that film, which was distracting. But I would be interesting to listen to him. I looked up here, it's an hour and 50 minutes if you look at the YouTube videos of him. Of the podcast, but I would be interested to hear, this guy's out there getting the job, making money, making films, doing what he wants to do, and that's, Netflix has hired him to do his Rebel Moon franchise, right? So I can't fault him for being able to do that and continuing to do so. He's got to be doing something right in the pitch process, and I'd be interested to know what that is at the end of the day. How is he tricking these people into giving him money continually? But You're right. That's a good point. I have, despite what we want to think, I've heard only good things about the Flash. Even anecdotally and through these screenings, I'm very intrigued to see how it plays out, and if the changes, like I said, to remove Zack Snyder's references in this movie are true, and it comes out the other side. Did the DC universe find a way to make it carry on, or just exist in its own little pocket? So like, hey, if we want to reference this, we could, kind of at the same time. I'm very intrigued about this movie. Like you mentioned, like just how did it happen, and what's the end result? Because it went through so many directors and so many rewrites. So I'm sure we'll find a lot more articles about this next week whenever we come back from CinemaCon. Or we're not going to CinemaCon. Whenever CinemaCon's over and people are writing to get all their articles in for the week. Just added this for the show, Mike. I wanted to tell you Forrest Whittaker will be back to reprise his role of Saw Gerrera in season 2 of Andor. They really, really, really love Saw Gerrera in the Disney universe lately. I don't know.
He's glue that sticks a lot of things together, but just like all of the Andor related glue, right? It all dies. It all dies on a planet by some giant spaceship.
He does. He dies. Was it on Jeddah? He was on the planet Jeddah when he died.
Yeah. I guess theoretically, like if between Andor and Saw, if one of them had to miraculously survive, I guess Saw makes a little bit more sense because, like, I don't think you kind of exactly see him get vaporized like you do Andor, but maybe there's a way around it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure he's
dead.
He's cut off.
Yeah, and Saw Gerrera, like created earlier on in the Clone Wars, they show him as like a younger person, right? As a freedom fighter, guerrilla warfare in the Clone Wars. He has been in the Jedi Fallen Order game. He might have even been in Rebels. I don't remember, but I feel confident I can say he was in Rebels. And obviously Andor season 1. And then by the end we see him in Star Wars Rogue One. He's a little unhinged, right? Like he's breathing out of his like little breather mask. He's using like the mind reader or mind kind of flare aliens on Riz Ahmed's character. So like there is I don't know, maybe in Andor we're gonna see this breakdown over time, right, of him being like just a normal kind of rebel freedom fighter thing at all costs to becoming the unhinged person who lives on the Jedi planet a little bit. I think I like to see that. But Andor, like I said, we're still about a year and a half away from season 2, but by then we'll be back in prestige television mode, Mike, for that. In the interim, I think we will get I think we'll have the Mandalorian season 4 before we see Andor season 2, if I'm going to be honest with you. But we're going to sit and talk about the Mandalorian season 3, which just wrapped up after eight episodes, right? It's 8 episodes. So we just got off of the show. It's been going, for a little over 2 months, ran in parallel with Star Wars: The Bad Batch on Wednesdays, and we're back at it again after how long has it been for season 2? Was it 2 years? Year and a half?
I guess it depends if you're accounting appearances of Mando, showing up in the Book of Boba Fett. It feels like he's just kind of always been with us a little bit each year. Yeah. Right? So whether it's whether it's been a full season or not.
October of 2020. So I'm gonna count. I will count again. Book of Boba Fett, like it's like a 2.5, right? Like it fills in a lot of like, I wouldn't say it fills in the gap, but it kind of sets the pieces for this season to take place rather than.
Listen. You throw Pedro Pascal in that uniform, they put it up on a couple coat hangers inside of the room next to the volume, throw him in front of some Unreal Engine backgrounds, and he just got a constant stream of Mando.
He's not even in this. He wasn't. I think he was only in the suit like 4 times. They said this season.
Yeah, I saw a screenshot of some. I guess maybe there was like some discourse in the background where people were talking about how much he was there. I'm not 100% sure, but there were some side by side pictures of like just some mannerisms of how Mandalorian, like Mando, would just kind of like stand in a specific scene, and then he put it side by side from Joel in The Last of Us, and like, tell me that's not Pedro under that suit. And it's like, yeah, no, that's a pretty convincing. Actually, yeah, they do kind of look like they're standing in the same pose.
So the problem with I would say the problem with that, the reason he wouldn't be, if anyone was interested, is because he was filming The Last of Us while they were filming this. So I would 100% think that they would be like, yeah, you can, we'll get your stand-ins, because this season, again, no spoilers, he did not remove his helmet at all this season, right? The other 2 seasons he did. This season he did not.
Well, I would disagree that no spoilers, because we should be talking about spoilers.
Well, that's
because
true. This show's
the season's over.
Yeah.
It's the end of our podcast episode. If you don't want to hear the spoilers, just go ahead and dip. But we never see his pretty gruffled face.
No.
But my guess would be this: if he was not in the suit that often, it was not him being a diva.
No,
He seems like he is really loving this new chapter of his career, from kind of going to obscurity to biggest star on the planet.
You mean internet daddy, if you will.
Yes, exactly.
But at the same time, you're gonna go focus your time and money or energy where you're on screen the whole time, right? Like in The Last of Us, he is not under makeup. He was in 9, all but like 1 or 2 episodes, right? I think there's like the flashback episode he might have been in for a couple seconds or minutes, but like in this Mandalorian, he does not take his helmet off this season, so it could literally he could have been in like you always say, Mike, in his closet doing the lines and sending them over, because there's no mouth movements to line up. Like they're like, when you're wearing a Mandalorian helmet, it is the easiest voiceover work in the world. It seems like, we get half of the season. I would say in this we get 2 Mandalorian crews, as we've always seen, right? The masked fanatics and the unmasked, I guess, mercenaries, if you will. And they had a lot of both. So I think there's a lot of voiceover work done this season for that. But I think they did change the voice of Pat. It's not Paz Vizsla, the machine gun dude. They changed his voice actor to the guy who actually plays him in the show this season, because he had more lines and more of a presence than he had in the previous seasons. I think was the biggest thing.
Doesn't have a presence anymore.
He does not. He did go down. I will think. I do say. Really, if I sit here and think about this, Mike, the only 2 episodes of this whole season I can remember are the final 2 episodes, right? Like, if you could have just watched the final 2 episodes, that's all you need out of this season, really, to understand the story and kind of what's going on.
But
if you will.
To be honest, I feel like that's the single biggest flaw with this season. And I'm going to put some caveats real quick for everything that I'm going to say about Mandalorian Season 3, because I think there's something going on here. There's something out of the ordinary when it comes to production of the season that's just not lining up with the first 2 seasons that we got. And you brought up a good point to me, I think, off mic in a text message, that possibly it could be the absence of Dave Filoni. Ahsoka show, I just looked it up, started production in May of last year, while this season started in October. But Ahsoka's not out yet, and they're still working on it. So I don't think Filoni was involved much in Season 3, or I think you could factually say not as much as the first 2 seasons, right? I think that's safe to say. And also, we still don't know exactly what are some of these long tail effects of COVID when it comes to production. If you remember, the second season of Mandalorian was almost done just before the pandemic kicked off. So they got pretty lucky that most of that second season was unaffected by the pandemic. But this was, I would say, mostly fully affected by it, at least I think when it comes to production rules, because I don't think those have really been totally loosened just yet or back to normal. I think they are just getting back to normal, like just within the last couple of weeks, at least out here in LA. I'm not too sure about. The volume is located in Georgia, right?
There's a couple volumes, so it could be in any of them, if I'm going to be completely honest.
And those are all indoor environments, so I'm just not 100% sure. But I think all of that's coming together. It made a really weird season for me. This just felt, not so tonally different. Like I feel like all of the decisions have made of where these characters should go and where they should end up. None of that's, out of question, but everything just felt off. The performances felt very stiff to me. The storytelling felt either unserious or very amateurish. It feels like the things that you could control in that environment were the best, right? Visual effects and music, just as great as they always are, right? Because that's all done in pretty much the same like computer office environment, right? So all of that's looking great and amazing and unchanged. But yeah, just like you said, Chris, like the most eventful things happen that you can remember in the last 2 episodes. So it almost felt like they were, just like trying to put some filler in here, right? Let's just make it to the last 2 episodes where we have some stuff, going down. And honestly, like, I wasn't really that excited to see Moff Gideon again, right? Mm-hmm. We saw Mando take him out pretty easily, right? Because Moff
the 5
Gideon
minutes we saw him, though, like, I mean, like, it's really... They didn't really give him anything to do this season.
Like, it wasn't that big of a reveal to me, to be honest. Like, oh, he's back. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I didn't really think he was super imposing to begin with, right? So just because you're giving him, like, this fancier, like, stormtrooper Mandalorian-esque armor, like I'm still not that into it.
I think there's 2 things with this one. If you look at the writer director list, there's a lot of the last episode. Dave Filoni wrote 2 episodes. One is remember where they had to go rescue the foundling from the big dinosaur bird or whatever.
Yes,
and that had the flashbacks to Grogu's escape from the Jedi Temple during that. That part of it was written by Dave Filoni, and then also the second to last episode where they go back to Mandalore the first time before Gideon appears at the end of the episode was written by Dave Filoni. Also, Rick Famuyiwa, he did the first episode and the last 2. I think he does some of the best action in the show as well, right? Like the action scenes in the last 2 were great. I would like to see if I could go back and have redone this, Mike, in a good world, the last 2 episodes literally being the entire season. Like, split those 2 into 8 episodes, right? And tell a more, I guess, not nuanced story, but a longer story, because as you mentioned, Moff Gideon, he showed up, right? But he only showed up literally in these last 2 episodes. At the end of 7, and then for a pretty, I would say probably one of the better fight scenes in episode 8, right? It was cool to see all the action going on in 8, but we didn't get a lot of action earlier on in the show at all. So I think, while we're seeing literally the Mandalorian, who we met as a bounty hunter and has kind of evolved a little bit. And then the other part is the Mandalorian, I guess, is kind of grown into like a 3-fold name, right? Because of, what's her name? Bo-Katan has really, she took a bigger role than I expected for this whole season. I didn't expect her to be there from episode 1 on in every episode, which was interesting.
Really, to be honest, she was kind of the core story of this season, and I feel like they should have leaned into it even more, to be honest, right? Because she was the only one that really went on a journey for the most part from this season, from going to this like skeptic to kind of respecting the culture and then being elevated to a leader. So I like that decision. I just overall thought the execution was just weak for the most part.
Yeah, and there are I would say there's an episode in here that I think has divided a lot of people, right? Where they go to a planet called Plaisir 15, which had probably at least 3 cameos that I know of, right? Had Jack Black, Lizzo, and Christopher Lloyd. Very, very divisive episode. I will say, to its credit, I'm happy the show shows us other cultures in Star Wars and all the worlds, because I'm tired of going back to the same 3 planets every time we do something, right? So whether people you can like it, you can hate it. I don't. It's fine. Everyone has their own opinion, but I'm glad that the show at least tried to step out and say, hey, look, there are other cultures in this universe other than Coruscant, Tatooine, and Mandalore out there.
As I say many times, if I never see another desert planet again in the galaxy far, far, far away, I'll be a happy man. Yeah, we never really got to talk about the Guns for Hire episode, the one with the Jack Black and Lizzo cameo in it, because we were kind of waiting for the season to wrap up. Yeah. I mean, to me, I think the thing that I like the least about the episode, though, was just the reason why it even had to exist, right? Because the hurdle for Bo-Katan and Mando, where they were trying to get to her old crew, crew, right? The mercenary, the unhelmeted Mandalorians, right? And the obstacle was like, oh, we literally see an establishing shot of them like outside in a grassy field, right? Mm-hmm. And the obstacle is, oh, we just can't physically get to them. Yeah. Like there's like, we can't hop on the right train and get off at the right stop because like Jack Black won't let us. So we have to go on this ridiculous like Law and Order-esque adventure to get their respect, to get dropped off at the right train stop. And it was just felt like such a weak excuse to like build this story in there.
And I would say the ending of this a lot of these episodes move way too fast for my liking. At the end of it, they're like, you can't lead us because you don't have the Darksaber. And then, Din Djarin was like, well, actually, the cyborg who captured me had the sword and she got it from him, so technically it's hers. I'm like, this is way too convenient to wrap this up. Yeah. Like, I get where we're going. I know what you're doing, but this is a way too convenient in this moment to move it fast. So I think there's like a lot of this stuff, like, again, I don't mind the other planets. I don't mind the characters, right? There are wild and crazy characters in every universe. Totally understand. But it is very much the quickness at which the actual story had to move along around it, which was the problem at the end of it.
Yeah, I mean, there were obviously some standout things that I liked in the season. It's not like I hated all of it. Any scene where Mandalorians are jumping out of a plane like shock troopers looks amazing. It's like so cool to just see the sky just with a half a dozen or more like Mandalorians flying around. It just looks cool, right? It's just scratching that cool itch in my hand of like, I want a bunch of action figures and I want to play with them on the floor.
Well, I'd even take a Mandalorian video game, right, where you play as like a class of Mandalorians versus other ones, like in here's like kind of like Fortnite or Call of Duty. You're dropped out of a Mandalorian spaceship with your class, and you have to go kill the other ones. As like,
I mean, the upgrade mechanics are already built into the gameplay right there, right? Are you going to play with the grappling hook? Are you going to do jetpacks? Are you going to be a flamethrower?
You get the minigun,
Are you going to do like knives or something? Maybe develop the lore of like some lower grade like dark sabers, right?
They had the vibroblades as well. Like you get to see the vibroblades
exactly.
in this,
and those are pretty cool.
Yeah.
So all of those were cool. I love the creature that lived inside of the robot at the bottom of
the spider bot
of the cavern. Yeah, that thing just looked cool. Like whoever was in charge of the visual development and design of that creature and the execution of its animation was just like very creepy. I was just like seeing Mando in there getting his like blood drained. It's like, this is cool. This is like a cool design.
Well, I'll tell you what, looking at, if we take one of the things, so at the end of this, the Darksaber is destroyed, right? No more Darksaber. Great. This is a really good way to wrap up all three Mandalorian seasons. I think the ending was really good to wrap it all up, right? We're in a new place going forward. We don't have the baggage of like, again, hopefully Moff Gideon and this Darksaber shit. It's done. We can move forward. But I will say they really skipped out on the Darksaber being too heavy for Din, right? Remember that little tease they put in Book of Boba Fett? Like, oh, you got to learn to use it better. He never got to use it but like twice. And I'm like, whatever. That's a real disappointment. I'm glad it's gone at this point. But I will say, looking at these episodes, if we did episode 1 and 2, skip to the end of Guns for Hire, and then did the last two as 3 and 4, this would be the entire season in a nutshell, right? Everything else in the middle, the pirate, while albeit space battles are really cool, did that do anything for the show? No, not really. like there's nothing out there for that.
And also, like, I think we did talk about this a little bit on the show just before we kind of took our Mando break during the podcast, where the episode of the Convert, right, the one where they break away from the Mandalorian storyline and they talk about like these rehabilitated, like, basically like prisoners of war, but I guess technically they're not prisoners, but
they're rehabilitated. Empire employees, if you will. Like, hey, you can provide a service to the New Republic. We're going to monitor you and do all this other stuff. But, here's a job for you.
And it really felt like, even though I very much disliked the episode, I was like, oh, well, maybe this will lead to something later in the season. And it really didn't.
No.
I mean, the kind of evil, kind of rehabilitated character, she pops up again momentarily, and I guess maybe a little bit of the backstory of kind of cloning is revived in that last episode, kind of. But like, it just didn't matter. It was almost like we already know cloning is a thing. Like, just there's an entire prequel movie where we go to the cloning factory, and then there's multiple like animated series where we follow cloned characters and what it means to be a clone and having your own like autonomy and personality. So it's just like, it just felt like, why did we even stop for a whole episode to check in with this when it felt like it amounted to nothing, and most people didn't like it.
Well, I say at the time, I'm like, this is cool. These characters are going to become important later, right? At the moment, it felt like, oh, this is fun. Maybe there's like more, I would say, like embedded agents in this, right, that are working, and we're going to find out. You know, we didn't even get to see a visual of Moff Gideon's escape from the ship, like a retelling or a reenactment. We just got to see the ship in space. Like, you know, they told us, they didn't show us. But I thought this was going to come up because there is a really cool part in the next to last episode, right, with the Shadow Council at the beginning of this. We get to see. Do you remember Commander Hux from the sequel trilogy? Right? So his dad's in there. Captain Pelion, who was very heavily in the Grand Admiral Thrawn books that I'm reading from the 90s. Like, he is Thrawn's second in command. They even name drop Thrawn, right? Because we know they're building towards that movie that Filoni's working on. But like, you know, that those are fun little teases and stuff like that. But like, I really thought they would do more with those characters, right? The embedded New Republic, Dark Agents, and they didn't. And I'm like, you know, you had an opportunity, and you just kind of told the story how you got rid of the cloning guy. But if you never reminded me he was there, I would have never remembered him at all to begin with.
Yeah. And I think they overall just kind of fumbled the whole concept of Mandalore as a planet to begin with, right? You know, we talked about previous Mandalorian episodes, and especially coming off of an entire season of Andor, where it felt like they probably hardly ever used a volume at all. Like, whenever they would land on Mandalore, I could just see the volume more than I ever thought that I could, especially when they're kind of on that rocky landing pad in those first couple episodes where they go there. It's like, I can see the dome, like, already. Like, obviously they're doing a great job, but I can tell what's going on here. And then there's a few shots when they're inside the planet and they're like running through corridors, hard cut to a different shot of a new corridor. It's like, okay, they're just rearranging the set. So it kind of just makes me feel like I'm watching, like, you know, an old episode of Star Trek. And I'm sure some people are like, oh, that's a great nostalgic like callback to old sci-fi, but to me it just feels like I can see the production seams really coming in when we're exploring Mandalore.
Well, there are two things. One, it's, you know, very convenient that the sky is a very gray overcast color and everything was quote unquote glassed on the floor, right? Shiny floors, very undescript sky. Perfect. My biggest thing was when I saw the rock formations on the thing, and the droid goes behind the rock. I'm like, there's just one rock here, and he just went behind it to hide. Like, there's no path back there. He's just hiding behind the rock while they cut. And I get that. I think, you know, Mandalore's a planet. If it was too much sets, I don't think they should have built the sets, but hopefully as Mandalore is rebuilt, right? We now know that they are back there. The Forge has been redone. They're going to attempt to rebuild Mandalore. Yes, build those sets now that they actually have something living in there. Well, absolutely go forward and do that. You don't need to use the volume for everything now. You can do both.
And it's like, I do love the idea, though, if you're kind of like this fractured, like, evil network in the galaxy and you need a place to hide out and rebuild. Oh, Mandalore makes total sense, right? Because, no one's looking at that planet to begin with, and even if they could, they can't really look at it because you can't see to the surface with, like, instruments. So I love that clever idea, right?
Yeah.
But I feel like there should have been, like, almost like hints that they were there once they made it to the surface at the beginning of the season, because it was like, oh, all of a sudden there's a gigantic base there, like, carved into, like, a valley, and there's, like, starships, and it's, like, all fleshed out, and it's just like, how did they, like, not notice that? You know,
I can understand they're, like, in the rocks and they can't read into the ground. That's fine, but, like, and I honestly appreciate that they're using older, you know, Star Wars visuals as, like, the hallways, right? Those are the hallways you saw in the Death Star, like, back when they were making the original Star Wars movies. Same pattern. But at this, you know, I agree with you at the same time, like, there just happens to be several military attachments, like, ready to fly in at a given moment. Like, they don't need security there. They knew that they don't need security because no one's coming there. I did enjoy the TIE fighter drops from the ceiling like bats whenever they were flying out. I thought that
looked rad. Yeah,
that was pretty cool. The return of the Praetorian Guards. I still want some history on them, but pretty cool to see early, like 20-year prior Praetorian Guards, kind of come out of the woodwork. And then also, one of the cool things about the guy who died, I'm trying to remember, Paz Vizsla. He, for being, his son was saved and he was killed, but like literally it took 3 Praetorian Guards to kill him. Like, I'm like, he took a lot of troopers with him. That guy's a pretty badass for a Mandalorian. And I'm glad they all kind of came together. I was really worried at the end they were going to be like, oh, Axe Woves or the armorer sold them out to Gideon, right? And she was the one helping to make the Beskar armor. So I'm really glad they didn't go that route and kept everyone together, and it made it. I thought her aerial battle with the hammers, that was cool as fuck. Like,
yeah,
that aerial battle in the cave was awesome, like visually.
There's obviously some great stuff that goes on here. That final battle where Grogu is finally just kind of trained enough to where he can contribute to a fight scene is really cool.
How cliche was it that a little bitty pipe fell on him and held him down?
Oh yeah,
I was like, that's a cliche, isn't it?
I mean, him inside of the robot with the no, yes button.
Yeah.
It felt like prime. Like Mandalorian, like silliness in the best way, of almost to the point where like, man, I wish this was saved for like a better season, so I felt like I could enjoy it more, because I think this ultimately brings me to, we're Star Wars fans, right? We're gonna be watching this no matter what. Disney Plus does not need to worry about if they're pleasing us in a way, because hell, we even stuck it in with Andor, and we didn't even think that was something we even wanted, right? So it's almost like the show is being made for us.
We stuck it through Book of Boba Fett. Let's not cut anything here. We stuck through that whole season. Yeah.
So ultimately, like, if you're making these big decisions on a streaming scale, I can tell you from the point of view of my wife, who loved the first 2 seasons and just, is in love with baby Grogu. I really had to convince her to finish this season, right? We were both evenly kind of like checking out, this more than any other season, where phones, coming off the coffee table, waiting for, acts to wrap up to see where the hell this episode was going. So I would say ultimately, I don't think this is like fatal way. If this was being diagnosed in an office, I don't think anything is fatal here, right? But I think it's more like, hey, your ticker's looking a little, your cholesterol's a little high, maybe cut back on a couple of these things. Come back to me, and in 1 year, come back to me in one more season. We'll check back in. I'm sure you'll be fine. So that's kind of what I'm looking out for.
In that regard, though, I do think they set it up in a good point where we're not expecting the same thing going forward, right? Like this show, they changed the status quo and they put the characters in new places that we don't have to worry about. And maybe even feels more like a season 1 next season, right? Because we know Jon Favreau has admitted he has written season 4 already. So season 4 is done written. So I think they're going to work on this through the back half of this year. They know now, we all know now, they're working towards the New Republic movie with Dave Filoni at the helm, which I believe is going to be a full... I don't think Grand Admiral Thrawn will be the entire villain of Ahsoka, right? We saw him... I think the Dark Jedi will be, and Thrawn will appear in the last episode, and he will be the villain of the movie at the end of the day. And I think we're moving that way. But I think season 4, having, again, Grogu is a foundling now, right? Or what's he, not a foundling? The next level up, where he can't take the creed, but he can work with... Yeah,
like a trainee or something.
Like an apprentice or something, yeah.
Yeah.
So he is going to do that, and he is now a freelancer for the New Republic, right? So I think he's going, like, the story is not going to be back to Mandalore. Maybe once to check in, maybe to... Honestly, I've seen a lot of fan art of people giving Grogu a Mandalorian helmet that fits him. Like, maybe he'll be a little bigger, right, for the next season, instead of like a little baby the whole time. Give him a helmet, whatever. But I think we're going to see a different season 4 than we've seen going past, because the end of this, with the Darksaber destroyed, Moff Gideon's clones and himself probably destroyed. There's rumor that it wasn't him because he's missing the mustache that he had on all the all the promo art had him with the mustache, and they're like, Well, that was just a clone that they killed.
That's going to be that would be one of the biggest mistakes I think they could make.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Him back again, because it was already so underwhelming for me to see him.
They love bringing him in the final episode, and that's it. Nothing else throughout the season.
Mm-hmm.
They did that in the first one as well. But like, put him in a new area, doing one-off missions. Leading to this bigger story where he's going to team up with Ahsoka and the Rebels crew to take on Thrawn. Right? He's like, hey, we need a hired hand to help us. We're gonna get him. To do some missions with us, or do a mission in tandem while we're doing something else, I think is the way to go, because I feel like the ending of this feels like a new beginning for everybody, and that's really kind of I think what you're saying, right? Don't do another season of the past 3 seasons we've seen of The Mandalorian. Do a new one where he's doing new missions and has something else to work for, rather than this Darksaber BS or like working with the Creed and going back to bring the Mandalorians together. I think there's a new beginning here that we can going forward.
Yeah. Well, at the beginning of the episode, I thought we were going to be a little bit more split, but I thought you were going to be slightly more optimistic, and I think you are more optimistic than me for sure. But it seems like we were both kind of let down by this season in some way.
I wouldn't say I'm let down. It's just not the best season, right? In comparison to everything else, this is not the worst television in the world, right? There's much worse out there that we could be watching. You could have watched Ghosted today on Apple TV Plus and been really disappointed. Like, this is not the best, but like you can tell that it's not, Jon Favreau may be trying his best, but it's missing the I guess the inherent guidance of Dave Filoni, right? Who knows Star Wars and loves Star Wars, who is continually giving projects, but like nobody. Did you see him in the final episode? By the way, Dave Filoni, the cowboy hat at the bar. In the final episode.
Oh no, I didn't notice him.
Yeah, at the bar when he goes to the New Republic, you can see that cowboy hat a mile away, Mike. If you go back and look at that, but I think Jon Favreau by himself is just okay. He's getting to a point where it's just okay. It's missing the Dave Filoni thing because he is working on his own show, and I'm excited to see Ahsoka, and hoping for the best for that to bring some more quality back to this. At the end of the day, but when you say like we last year we had Andor, which is peaked again, prestige television, peak Star Wars, different, right? There's a lot more aliens in this than there were in Andor. Different story, different sets, but like you can see like, oh, this could have been better, and we've seen better, so do better next time. And I'm hoping that this new status quo, where everything is Mandalorian going forward, a direction for a movie that Dave Filoni is saying we need to get these characters to X. Okay, so start working on that. Can bring us a really good season 4, but at the same time, I just don't think 3 was the best at the end of the day, right? If you say rank your Mandalorian seasons, you'd be like, well, like maybe 2, 1, 3 or 1, 2, 3, right? At the end of the day, so not too bad, but not too good either. Don't take us out of context. But let's wrap this up. Let's get out of here, Mike. If people know what you're up to, what you're doing, where can they find you at, buddy?
Well, they can find me at Mike Royer Design on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok, and you can read my brand new webcomic, Life Rewards Risk, at liferewardsrisk.com. Chris, people want to check you out. Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Valdan87. You can also still message me at Twitter, Valdan, but again, apps deleted, whatever you want. You can come listen to this show every week where I'm going to be, and if people want to listen to more of our episodes, Mike, where can they find all those goodies at?
Oh, all of those goodies exist at superheroslate.com, the best place to find all the avenues we host our show and to get our awesome show notes on our upcoming release calendar. If you want to see the movies and TV shows that we're going to be talking about this year, we got a nice little calendar over there that you should check out. Find us on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, wherever else you love to listen to find podcasts. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and get merch at superheroslate.com/store. We love hearing from you. Reach out. What did you think of Mandalorian Season 3? Did you love it? Do you want more of it? Do you want something a little bit different? What's your favorite season? Let us know, and we love our super fans. So if you want to be a super fan of this show, all you got to do is share the show with a friend, share the show with a buddy, and we will be back next week, folks.
That's right, and we'll catch you next week.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe.